We are talking about one of the more interesting processes that occur in the body. There's lots of interesting things that occur in the body, but one of the more interesting things that happens in the body, something we take for granted, it's the idea of carrying or ferrying materials through the body. Sometimes the body needs to have substances ready in an on-demand fashion. It doesn't have time to wait to make the stuff, so a certain amount is always going to be carried around in the blood, ferried about, shuttled about through the blood. It's kind of like those tow trucks that you see driving around the highways in big cities that are looking around for stalled cars. They carry all the supplies that they need for to repair cars that are stalled or that have flat tires on the side of the highway, so the cars don't have to wait for some garage somewhere far away to provide them with the parts. In the same way, various molecules will travel around the blood highway, just like tow trucks travel around regular highways. The same way, various molecules will travel around the blood highway looking for chemicals that need to be activated or raw materials that need to be delivered to facilitate various chemical reactions. Lots of things are carried about in the body in this fashion. Growth hormones, developmental hormones, these are all carried about through the blood in this way. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, which are all superactive molecules. These things are held by globs of protein, and then these globs of protein that are carrying around the testosterone and the estrogen travel around the blood, and when testosterone needs to be utilized by some cell, this glob of protein will dump off the testosterone and the cell will use it. Vitamin A has a carrier. The stress hormone cortisol has a carrier. Vitamin E, cholesterol, these all have carriers. And these carrying agents are molecules. There's also a second type of carrying agent, and this is a kind of carrying agent or carrying process that involves atoms and elements, actually pieces of electricity that are attached to the atoms and elements, and these things are all carried around in the same way that testosterone and estrogen is carried around. Sulfur, magnesium, potassium, these are all carried around by molecules, and then when they're needed, the sulfur, the magnesium, or the potassium gets dropped off. One of the most important, actually probably the most important of all atoms that are carried around in this way is the atom phosphorus. Phosphorus is called the light bearer. Phosphorus carries electricity, carries pieces of electricity. We call those electrons. And this makes phosphorus very, very, very explosive and highly energetic stuff. This super high energy of phosphorus makes it potentially very toxic and very deadly. We talked about the toxicity and the deadly nature of phosphorus in the past. Phosphorus was used in chemical warfare because of its high energy state. Fireworks use phosphorus because of its high energy state. And in the body, this high energy state, and also in plants, this high energy state of phosphorus is exploited for growth. Plants use it to fuel rapid growth, and as farmers know, you gotta have phosphorus to grow plants. That's because the phosphorus has this high energy element. Hand grenades, mortars, nerve gas, explosives, fireworks, all of this is made possible via the explosive nature of phosphorus, and somehow life itself has figured out how to harness the power of phosphorus, how to harness the combustible energy of phosphorus to drive chemical reactions, and it does this by carrying phosphorus around in various molecules and then releasing it at just the right moment. Every tiny little nano movement in the body, from blinking your eye to thinking a thought to wiggling a toe, every little tiny microscopic movement in the body depends on the ability of a molecule to drop off a piece of phosphorus that it's been carrying around, to drop this little piece of phosphorus around to fuel a chemical reaction to make something happen. This carrier that carries phosphorus is something called ATP. And you probably heard of ATP, but you maybe didn't know what ATP really was. ATP, which is called the major energy currency in the body, is actually a carrying device for phosphorus. It's a delivery system for phosphorus, which then contributes its electrical energy to some chemical reaction so it can proceed. ATP shuttles around through the body, it carries phosphorus around, and when some chemical reaction needs energy, a little piece of phosphorus comes off that ATP to fuel the chemistry of the body, the chemistry of life. ATP is, in fact, the quintessential molecule of life. It's what distinguishes everything that's alive from things that aren't alive. It distinguishes the life force from rocks and stones and sands. ATP is life, from a lowly bacteria or a yeast cell to a human brain cell or liver cell or bone cell. There's other elements that carry phosphorus around. One is called creatine. That's what creatine does. That's one of creatine's main roles, is it delivers phosphorus so that energy can occur. Specifically, it delivers phosphorus to muscles, and that's what makes creatine so important for everybody that has muscles, everybody that uses muscles. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. You just have to have muscles. That means all of us. That means infants, that means babies, that means old people and elderly people, that means everybody in between. Not necessarily just athletes. In fact, if you have heart disease, or you've had a heart attack, or you've had a bypass procedure done, or you have brain health issues, Alzheimer's disease, dementia issues, nervous system health issues, skin issues, you might benefit by supplementing with creatine. Creatine is a phosphorus carrier. It carries phosphorus around, and it's one of the main ways that the body makes sure that there's plenty of phosphorus around to do its work. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. We're coming back at you with more good health information. Our number today is 855-660-4261. If you've got questions about health, nutrition, prescription drugs, we got lines open for you, and we want to hear from you. We'll be back with more good health information on the bright side right after this. Okay, let's see here. Finishing up, creatine carries phosphorus around. That's why creatine is so important. It carries around phosphorus so the body can use that phosphorus. Cells can use that phosphorus to contract muscles and make things happen. Creatine's not just for athletes. It's for anybody, really. Anybody that's got muscles, especially if you're dealing with heart problems or brain problems or skin problems, you may find creatine beneficial. Another type of carrier is a cell membrane, the outside part of a cell. The cell membrane is actually a carrier for fats, and it's a carrier for hormone precursors, substances that get turned into hormones. We talk a lot about the membrane of a cell for good reason. Cell membranes, as we've said, are the juncture of all disease. All disease is cell disease, but more accurately, all disease is cell membrane disease. The cell membrane is a bridge between the inside world of a cell and the outside world of a cell. It's the bridge by which nutrients and toxins get in and out of a cell. Even more fundamentally, the membrane is an information processor. In Bruce Lipton's classic book, The Biology of Belief, he talks about the cell membrane as being a liquid crystal semiconductor. Liquid crystal is a type of material that's a cross between a liquid and a solid. You can think of a liquid crystal as a liquid solid, or if you prefer, a solid liquid, depending on how you want to look at it. What this basically means is the cell membrane is a solid that can flow just like a liquid. It's a solid that can change shapes. It's a shape-shifting solid. The fact that the cell membrane can change shape means that it stores information. Love that word, information. What information means is stuff that's in a shape. A formation. It's in formation. That's all information is. It's random, chaotic, gibberish stuff that happens to have a form, that happens to be in a form. That's why it's called information. One shape means one thing, and a second shape means something else. It's kind of how letters of the alphabet, and it's how language itself works. The various shapes of the letters convey information, and the various shapes of the cell membrane, likewise, convey information. Because the cell membrane conveys information via shapes, its ability to be deformed, or its ability to morph, its ability to change shapes is absolutely critical to the inner workings of a cell. The cell membrane is, in fact, the most important determinant of what will occur inside a cell. The fact that the cell membrane is a semiconductor means that it will conduct some things and it won't conduct other things. That's what semiconducting means. Some things get through, some things don't. Some things can cross the membrane, some things cannot. In a conductor, everything will be conducted, everything will pass through, but in a semiconductor, some things will conduct and some things won't. By controlling what gets in through a membrane, or what gets through a membrane into a cell, data can be conveyed from the outside of a cell to the inside of a cell. This is what it means to process information. By changing shapes, that's the liquid crystal part, and by controlling what gets across the membrane, that's the semiconduction part, a membrane directs data from the outside of the cell to the inside of the cell. It sends data from the outside world to the inside world of a cell. In our bodies, we have a structure, we have an organ that does the same thing. This organ resides in our head. We have an information processor in our skull, and it takes the outer environment through various sensing structures like our eyes and our ears and our nose and our skin, and then processes it and sends it out to the various internal systems of the body. The structure, as quite obviously, is called our brain. And it's why we can look at an apple, and the light from the apple will bounce off of it, and enter into our eyes, get into our brains, and our mouth will water. Or we can smell an onion, and our eyes will water. We'll see a pretty girl, and other various physiological functions will kick in. Our brain is our body's information processor in the same way that a cell membrane is a cell's information processor. And that makes the cell membrane very, very, very important. In fact, that makes understanding the cell membrane and how to keep the cell membrane healthy probably the single most important step you can make, the single most important step you can take to keep your body healthy. And as we'll find out, the cell membrane is largely composed of fats. In fact, it can be thought of as a carrying system for fats. And by the way, there's inside the cell, there's lots of little tiny membranes too. How incredible is it that a cell that's 100 times smaller than the head of a pin, on average, is actually comprised of hundreds of thousands of even smaller structures within that cell, which is 100 times smaller than a head of a pin. Most of these little subcellular internal structures can't even be seen under an ordinary microscope. And each one of these tiny little subcellular structures that live inside this cell, it's 100 times smaller than a head of a pin, has its own membrane that is itself thousands of times smaller than the substructures. Can you guys see how absolutely mind-blowingly amazing this stuff is? The human body, the biological system, cells themselves, substructural elements inside of cells. This is absolutely mind-blowing. These structures that live inside a cell have weird names like the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus and the centrosome and the mitochondria and the lysosomes. We're not going to get into the details of all of these substructures, but they're mind-blowing. They blow science fiction out of the water. There's no science fiction writer on the planet that could have dreamed this stuff up. Now, I'm only telling you guys this not to get into detail, but just so we can all get a sense of the unbelievable amazingness of this life force, the divine force that has structured this system with an absolutely mind-blowing, incomprehensible, organized, and highly, highly, highly intelligent nature. A cell of which we have, or we're composed of, 50 to 100 trillion, depending on who you ask, 50 to 100 trillion of these things come together in some kind of organized cooperative way to form us. A cell itself is an absolutely amazing, amazing, amazing biological entity. In fact, in all of life on the entire planet, in the entire miracle of life, the ultimate and fundamental miracle is the miracle of a cell. And in my opinion, we are far too glib about the cell when we address it. We talk about it all the time, and then we move on about our lives and our families and our mortgage and our loves and our joys and our fears and our illnesses and our day-to-day projects and problems, and we forget or brush under the table the fundamental miracle that underlies all of these things. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We got more good health information and phone calls coming at you right after this. Don't go away. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get your calls here in just a moment. If you're on hold, hang tight. Got a letter from Mark who says, my normal blood pressure runs in the 140 to 150 over 90 range. My doc says this is borderline high. He's 6'8", 185 pounds, 51 years old. What really is normal blood pressure, Mark asks, and what foods, if any, can I eat to lower it? Also, what products do you have that will accomplish this? Well, the first thing to understand is High blood pressure is a sign, a manifestation of this stress response run amok. The generic stress response that's responsible for clotting the blood and for increasing the respiratory rate and for shutting down the digestive system is responsible also for causing the blood pressure to rise. It's one of the body's stress response, adaptive stress response mechanisms. So the most important strategy to dealing with high blood pressure is to figure out what the heck is getting into your body that's causing stress. Lack of oxygen can also cause this kind of stress, and deep breathing is my favorite, all-time favorite way to lower blood pressure. By the way, a normal blood pressure is right around anywhere from 120, 90 on the top number to 120 on the top number to 50 or to 90 on the bottom number. 90 over 50 to 120 over 90. That's kind of the range of a normal blood pressure. If your blood pressure is high, there isn't a prescription drug on the planet that can lower your blood pressure without poisoning your blood pressure system. That's the only way prescription drugs can do it. They don't kindly and gently lower your blood pressure. They poison it. They poison the system. Basically, for the most part anyway, they'll either force fluid out of your body, that's called a diuretic, or they'll shut down your heart. That's called a beta blocker or a calcium channel blocker. Sometimes they will mechanically poison the vasculature and then open up blood vessels, and there's some really toxic drugs that do that. The bottom line is antihypertensive drugs, whether they're beta blockers or diuretics or calcium channel blockers, are nasty, toxic, deadly, awful medications. Among the most awful medications you could ever use. Diuretics probably aren't as bad as some of the beta blockers or calcium channel blockers, but nonetheless, high blood pressure is not caused by a drug deficiency. As we've said so many times in this program, diseases are not drug deficiencies. Number one, deep breathing techniques. That's probably the simplest, best way to lower your blood pressure. Quickest way, too. And number two is reduce your intake of sugars and lower your insulin. That's the second best way to lower your blood pressure. Stop eating the insulin-spiking foods, or at least reduce your intake of insulin-spiking foods, and then using nutrients that help stabilize blood sugar and help stabilize insulin. The B complex are probably the most important nutrients you can take for blood pressure or for sugar metabolism. And you'll get those in the Beyond Tangy Tangerine in spades. Lots of the B complex, especially niacin, by the way, probably the most important of the B complex nutrients for lowering blood pressure. You may want to throw in some timed release niacin in addition to using your Beyond Tangy Tangerine, 100 to 200 milligrams of timed release niacin. Vitamin C can also be helpful for lowering blood pressure. Same with vitamin E. Vitamin E has some blood thinning effects that will lower blood pressure. And then there's minerals that have some nice blood pressure lowering effects, most notably magnesium. In fact, magnesium alone may lower blood pressure. It's a relaxing kind of mineral. It antagonizes, it's the opposing mineral to calcium. Calcium and magnesium work in balance, and calcium channel blocking can be affected by magnesium, in essence anyway. Magnesium can be thought of as nature's calcium channel blocker, and most of us are going to be deficient in magnesium unless we're supplementing. So you got lots of strategies for reducing the stress response from a physical level: deep breathing techniques, the B vitamins, vitamin C, reducing your intake of insulin-spiking foods, and then using the mineral magnesium. Of course, mental and emotional strategies are also important, because when we think stressful thoughts, feel stressful feelings, our blood pressure will reflect that mental and emotional stress. So mental relaxation, emotional relaxation, thinking kind thoughts, thinking loving thoughts, feeling loving feelings, and kind feelings, those are also important. And of course, the spiritual dimension of all health issues always needs to be addressed. Reconnecting with spirituality, reconnecting with our divine nature, simply by contemplating the miracle that really is the life force that can go a long way towards relaxing your blood pressure. Go get a blood pressure cuff and then test it. Get a blood pressure cuff, take your blood pressure, and then do your deep breathing techniques. And then test your blood pressure. Take your blood pressure, a baseline blood pressure, and then think kind, loving, peaceful thoughts. Think of a pet, or even pet your dog or pet your cat. Place attention on something. Be present. Be in the now. All of these are wonderful ways to lower blood pressure and relax the stress response. I met a guy at the Longevity Convention a couple of weeks ago. He was a Marine, and he was walking around with a service dog. And I asked him, he wasn't blind or anything. He didn't have any physical handicaps. I asked him about the service dog, beautiful little golden retriever. And he said that they gave him the service dog because he was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and whenever he got into a situation that triggered stress, crowds tended to trigger stress for this gentleman, he would pet his dog, and it would relax him. Why? Because when you pet your dog or when you pet your cat, you're present. You're not thinking about the future. You don't have any regrets about the past when you're petting your dog or you're petting your cat or you're paying attention to your baby or you're placing attention on any innocent creature and you're not scared of that creature. And that's why we have dogs and cats, because we trust them. They elicit a sense of trust and well-being from us, because when we pay attention to our animals, when we pay attention to our baby, when we pay attention to anything, we return to the present. We return to the moment, and nothing will reduce the stress response faster, because you know what, guys? There's no stress in the moment. Everything's perfect in the moment. Think about it. In the moment, in the now, right at this split second, is there anything you're stressed about? In the split second, don't you have enough air? Don't you have enough nutrients? Don't you have enough of everything that you need in this moment? It's only future and it's only past where our problems reside, where our stresses reside. Even from a physiologic perspective, if you're standing tall, you're standing straight in this moment, in this now, everything is perfect and everything is fine. Return to the now. If it means petting your dog or your cat, return to the now. If it means thinking kind thoughts and thinking loving thoughts, thinking divine thoughts, return to the now, and you'll notice that your stress response starts to diminish. This is so important, even for a nutritional program like the Bright Side. And I know we talk about nutrients and we talk about chemistry all the time, but I'm telling you what, the bottom line is all of our health challenges and conversely, our wellness depend on spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects before they depend on anything physical. All right. I'm Pharmacist Ben. 855-660-4261 is our number on the Bright Side. Barbara in Alabama, welcome to the program. What's going on?
Thanks. Just wanted to ask you, what are your options to get off pharmaceuticals if you have congestive heart failure and AFib?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, the heart medications they're giving you are working by shutting down your heart. This is the medical strategy for dealing with congestive heart failure, to suppress the heart. In fact, the most popular, or the most famous anyway, heart medication for CHF, for heart failure, is something called digoxin or Lanoxin. Are you on that one by any chance?
I'm on amiodarone and carvedilol.
Okay, well, they didn't give you the digoxin or Lanoxin. That's the standard pharmaceutical for dealing with the heart. And digoxin or Lanoxin is a classic cardiotoxic medication. Not that the ones you're taking are a heck of a lot better, Barbara. Hang tight, because it's really, really easy to do. And I'll tell you what you get off your heart meds, or at least reduce your intake of them, which you really want to be doing when we come back from our break. 855-660-4261 is our number. Got a couple lines open for you. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back after this. All right, we're back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben, talking to Barbara in Alabama about heart medication. Barb, I gave you the bad news about the toxicity of these heart medications. Now let me give you the good news, because there is lots of good news. There's lots of things you could do for the heart. First of all, actually, Barbara, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, good. First of all, we got to reduce. You want to reduce the same kind of stressors that we were talking about with high blood pressure for our last letter I was reading before we got to your call. Keeping your blood vessels, circulatory system healthy is one of the most important strategies for keeping your heart healthy. Your heart depends on oxygenated blood, just like any other system of the body does. In fact, next to the brain, it depends on oxygenated blood more than in any other system of the body. So keeping blood flow, keeping the circulatory system operating perfectly, keeping the blood flowing nicely and smoothly and evenly and powerfully is very important, and that's where your deep breathing techniques come in. In fact, deep breathing techniques are also a wonderful way to kind of lower the speed of the heart. The heart won't have to pump as fast in order to deliver the blood if you're breathing deeply. So practice deep breathing techniques. That's probably the first thing I would tell you to do. You want to get on, if you have a smartphone, an iPhone, or an Android, get an app, which we've talked about in the past, called My Calm Beat or Bio Breathing. If you don't have a smartphone and you can't do the apps, just simply practicing your deep breathing techniques with a stopwatch can be effective. You want around 5 or 6 seconds in, and then maybe 7 or 8 seconds out. And if you could do longer, that's even better. You're going to find it's a little difficult to do at first, but it's very, very important. It'll also help you help get blood to the various organs of your body, as well as to your heart and as well as to your brain. And if you want to test this, you can use a blood pressure cuff also. You'll notice that as you're using your deep breathing techniques, your blood pressure will tend to drop. And then there's also wonderful nutrients for the heart. Probably if you're in congestive heart failure, 3 of the more important ones, in addition to the basic essential nutrients, which I'll tell you about here in a second, are coenzyme Q10. I'd be on maybe 100 milligrams a day of coenzyme Q10. Something called carnitine can also be helpful. You can do anywhere from 100 to 500 milligrams of carnitine. And then magnesium is also very important for cardiovascular health, for heart health. That's an essential mineral, as we were saying earlier, and it's one that most people don't get anywhere near enough of. You'll find that in the OsteoFX product from Youngevity and the OsteoMag product from Youngevity. Want around 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of magnesium a day. Vitamin C is super, mega important for the heart. It's important for everything, but it's really important for the heart. You ever notice that animals don't get heart attacks, Barbara?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Only people?
It is.
Only people get heart attacks. You know why? And there's a few other animals, too. Guinea pigs will get heart attacks, and gorillas will get heart attacks, too. One of the main reasons why only human beings and guinea pigs, strangely enough, and certain types of gorillas will get heart attacks. One of the main reasons why this is so is because only human beings and gorillas and guinea pigs don't make their own vitamin C. Dogs make their own vitamin C. Goats make their own vitamin C. Cats make their own vitamin C. Sheep make their own vitamin C. All animals make their own vitamin C, and animals tend to not get heart attacks, except for the animals that don't make vitamin C. Thus, the unbelievably important nature, by implication anyway, of vitamin C for the heart. In fact, there's a great book written by a guy named Dr. Matthias Rath, R-A-T-H, called "Why Animals Don't Get Heart Attacks," and he explains at length the importance of vitamin C for the heart. So around maybe 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C is a good place to be. Vitamin E is also very important for cardiovascular health, and like magnesium and like vitamin C and like all our essential nutrients, nobody gets anywhere near enough vitamin E from foods. I got a letter from a gal in Korea, a friend, at least a pen pal kind of friend, who wrote to me about how important herbs were and how she disagrees with me. I know she's listening now, so hey to Suzanne in Korea. She wrote to me about how herbs are really important and how she doesn't like when I say there's no herb deficiencies, and then she listed a whole bunch of reasons why herbs are important, and they were all nutrients. Yes, herbs are important and plants are important, but you're not going to get all the nutrients you need from herbs or plants, and nothing exemplifies the the problem with getting your nutrients from plants and veggies more importantly than vitamin E. Vitamin E is almost impossible to get from foods. You need to be on 400 international units a day. Everybody pretty much needs to be on 400 international units a day, but especially if you have heart problems or circulatory problems, vitamin E is very important for the entire cardiovascular system. Then keeping your blood sugar under control, next to deep breathing and the basic nutritional supplements we just talked about, keeping your blood sugar stable and keeping your insulin low is extremely important. Blood sugar problems and insulin problems and diabetes go hand in hand with CHF, congestive heart failure, and heart disease in general. In fact, I would venture to say it's almost impossible to have a cardiovascular problem, unless you have some kind of mechanical issue, to have a biochemical cardiovascular problem without having some kind of blood sugar issue. So keeping your intake of fast foods, refined flours, sugary foods, fruit juices and desserts and breads and pastas and cereals and other kinds of insulin spiking foods down, that's very, very important for the heart. And don't try to use willpower, because if somebody puts bread in front of you and you're trying to stay off of bread, it's going to be really difficult to say no. Same with cereals and cakes and pastas, etc., because our brain is hardwired to want those foods. However, if you replace the calories that you're getting from those kinds of foods with calories from protein as well as from essential fats and good fats, you'll find it much easier to wean yourself off of these insulin spiking foods. So increasing your protein, whey protein is probably the best. Get the Natural Factors whey, or you can use egg protein, or really any kind of protein is going to be beneficial for you as long as you're not cooking it too much. And then making sure that you're getting enough good fat, essential fatty acid fats, very, very important, especially omega-3 essential fatty acids. You'll get those from the Ultimate EFAs from Youngevity. I like coconut oil, which is a saturated fat. That can also be important for heart health. You can get your essential fatty acids in supplemental form from the Ultimate EFAs, and you can get coconut oil pretty much in any health food store. Look for organic, unrefined coconut oil. Then there's some various minerals that are important, especially the electrolyte minerals, very important for heart health. Potassium is really important for the heart. We talked about magnesium. Calcium is also important for the heart. Chloride is important. Sodium is important. You'll get all of these minerals, by the way, in vegetables, and using vegetable juices is a wonderful, wonderful way to make sure you're getting enough of these electrolyte minerals for your heart. And also, of course, the Beyond Tangy Tangerine can be thought of as a cardiotonic, a heart tonic, because of all the wonderful nutrients in the BTT. Get yourself on the Healthy Start Pack. And then last but most certainly not least is the very underappreciated and understated relationship between the digestive system and the heart, especially as it regards bile. The poorly acknowledged fluid next to the blood and next to the lymph, bile is probably the most important fluid in the body. Problems with bile go hand in hand with problems with the heart. So making sure that your gallbladder is working pristinely, making sure that your bile system is working well is important. You'll get bile support in the ultimate enzymes from Youngevity. You'll actually get literally ox bile in the ultimate enzymes from Youngevity. You can also use nutritional supplements that help you build bile. We talked about choline. We spent a lot of time talking about choline the last couple of weeks. That's very important for bile building. The amino acid taurine is important for bile building. And you can get something called lecithin, which is actually a component of bile, and that'll help you with fat processing, help you absorb fatty nutrients from your foods, and it can also help you build bile. You can find lecithin again in a health food store. Look for the lecithin granules rather than the lecithin liquid, in my opinion anyway. They're more effective. They're less processed. And you can also use, you don't have to get soy lecithin, which is the most common source of lecithin. You can also use sunflower lecithin. Whatever lecithin you use, try to find GMO-free lecithin, and if you can get organic, that's in your interest as well. So lots of strategies for you there. If you can't get off your heart meds entirely, you can certainly wean yourself down to a lower dose. And the less toxic medicine you take, even if you're still taking it, the lower your dose, the less you take, the better off you're going to be. Is that helpful, Barbara?
Well, it is, and also, do you say then do not take herbs? I know the electrophysiologist I go to, if you ask them about taking hawthorn or anything like that.
Hawthorn can help, but again, these are medicines. Hawthorn has some definite heart benefits. Foxglove may help, even though there's some toxicity associated there. But I don't like talking about herbs as much as I like talking about nutrients, because at the end of the day, we're not dealing with herb deficiencies, we're dealing with nutritional deficiencies. So yes, herbs have medicinal value, and they're certainly kinder and gentler from a medicinal perspective than drugstore pharmaceuticals, but indeed they're still medicines. They have to be processed as medicines. The body's detox system kicks in when you take your herbal medicine. That doesn't occur when you take nutritional supplements. Nutrients are what the body uses as raw materials, and even if you are going to use herbs, it still doesn't marginalize the importance of a good nutritional supplement program. Thanks so much for your call, Barbara. Appreciate it. That's all the time we have for today on The Bright Side. Thanks so much for listening, folks. I appreciate all of you guys. I love you guys, and I'm so grateful for your support, your Facebook posts, and your letters. We'll continue tomorrow talking about the miraculous nature of a cell and how it is used by the body as a caring system. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Have yourselves a wonderful, beautiful day. We'll talk to y'all later.